What's up, guys? Thomas Mott here alongside Josh Davis. Welcome to the Wednesday Link Live in the heat of the offseason, Josh. We are officially into no training camp, no minicamp, no OTAs, no games, and we just get a lot of speculation. We're having a lot of fun doing that tonight. Happy Wednesday. How are you?
I'm doing well, and happy Wednesday to you. Happy Wednesday to everyone who is possibly maybe just getting off of work or in traffic or listening to us. It's a little bit earlier, but I appreciate you scheduling this and moving it up just a bit because celebrating a wife's birthday that was this past weekend. So kudos to you. I appreciate it.
Worth it, 100%. Happy birthday, Sandy. You guys have a nice dinner tonight after the show. OTAs, though, and really minicamp, it's basically less than a week old now. The final practice was on Thursday. All the guys have gotten out of Philadelphia, at least the majority of them have. They're enjoying their, again, long, but only 6-week-long break before they're back at the NovaCare Complex at the end of July to actually begin training camp, put the pads on, and figure out who makes the team and who doesn't. And we wanted to get into big takeaways from minicamp because it's minicamp, and the takeaways can only be so big, but there have been plenty of headlines, Josh, the past couple of days.
There have been, yes. And to your point, most recently, or it kind of seems like most recently, the headlines or topics, which is pretty surprising, is Kelee Ringo. I know both of us did shows about that and talking kind of just the differences. And, you even mentioned like the crazy timing for it because we talk about all this different depth that the teams have or that the cornerback position has. And all of a sudden, like Kelee Ringo was that thought of like, hey, cool, there's some depth there, but it was never could he potentially start? Now, still, I don't know if he's actually going to get there, but even having the transition or kind of the growth and progression that we've seen or heard from limited action, yes, it was in OTAs, but still, like the reports are, and based on how he's moving and the fluidity and things like that, it's like, it's a great problem to have. And we continue to say it, but it's like you already felt that way with drafting some corners, with getting Isaiah Rodgers in here. And it's kind of like icing on the cake. It's like, it wasn't really as much of a plan. I think if we're being honest, the vast majority, now sure, there may be a select few, but I'm saying the vast majority, I don't think that there was hey, Kelee Ringo is a legit contender to start. And again, from the very early takeaways of OTA, it's like, hey, don't count him out. There's a possibility there. 6'2", 207, runs a 4.36. I mean, there's a lot of potential within that. So I don't know. It's a long way to go. We'll see who wins out with the job. But the secondary to me, I mean, it's just crazy the depth that's there. It's crazy the talent and the competition level is, like we say on the thumbnail and the titles. It's going to be fierce. It will be fierce come late July. It's just a little bit of a wait until then. So we will see.
It's so obvious that they had no clue Kelee Ringo was going to pop this offseason. And again, it's still early. There were plenty of people last year who popped during OTAs like Christian Ellis and never did anything. Ringo does feel a little bit different because the whole conversation on Kelee Ringo coming out of the NFL draft was the raw talent is there. The straight line speed is there. The size, the strength, the athleticism, it's all there. Can he actually get his hips to work right? Can he actually move laterally? And can he be a legit cover corner at the next level? And that was the big question mark. And the final 4 games of the season last year, you kind of said, probably not. Maybe a good backup, maybe a depth piece. But if he's actually, and again, they put him a lot at the first team reps, even more than Isaiah Rodgers got. If they truly believe that he's a starting cornerback, Philadelphia has, I mean, maybe the best cornerback group we have ever seen in terms of depth in Philadelphia. And they've had some good rooms, especially in the early 2000s, but right now, the depth is unbelievable. My big question going forward, though, Josh, is what do they do if you get to training camp, or let's say you get to week 4 of the NFL season, and Ringo and Rodgers are better than Darius Slay? Right? I mean, because right now, Darius Slay, Pro Bowler, he's 33, he's the perennial veteran. No one's hating on Darius Slay, but I think they are starting to kind of really hint to us, hey, we really like Ringo and we like Rodgers, and we have this guy named Quinyon Mitchell, who everyone thought was the best cornerback in the draft, all wanting to get on the football field. What happens if, I don't know, Darius Slay struggles a little bit during the start of the NFL season?
It'll be a crazy thing to happen, but it's a fair point. Yeah, if he does start to struggle or he starts to decline there, or maybe it seems a little bit, I think it would take a lot for him to lose that starting position before the season even starts. But, you get into the season maybe a couple weeks or something and you're going, well, this is not really working out, right? Like if there is a decline for whatever reason, now I'm not necessarily saying we expect that, but yes, to your point, if it were to, hypothetical, it's a great problem to have, as we said, and you have Ringo right there. So you wouldn't necessarily cross it off or knock it off of the list of saying, hey, this is a possibility that could happen. But at the same time, I mean, you just look at the depth across the board on this squad. It's like, hey, even if Slay works out this year, that's fantastic. But then to your point, you've got Kelee Ringo, you've got Isaiah Rodgers, you've got Quinyon Mitchell, you've got Cooper DeJean. Like the longevity of having these guys there, is phenomenal. And the beauty on top of it is, hey, look, hopefully Slay is at the same level. There's not a decline. At some point, it will happen. I mean, he's even basically said, like, hey, look, I'm getting older. I'm only going to play for so long. So whether that decline happens after he hangs him up and he knows he's done, or there's a little bit of decline, at some point it will happen. But the beauty too is that Slay is in there teaching the guys, and he's not afraid to. He's been very forthcoming about that. Like, hey, look, my job is to get them prepared for when they take over and however long that takes. So I think all of it is a positive. It's fantastic. Shout out to James Carver, by the way. Appreciate the happy birthday to Sandy, and said, yes, good point bringing up as far as we've mentioned a couple of times. But yes, AJ telling everyone that Ringo was going to be an all-pro. He had all-pro potential. Yeah. It's fair, but it's kind of like that translation of, okay, look, just because you see it, how long does it take? But again, like even Millie said there, Ringo flew under the radar because he came out a year early. He's one of the youngest guys on the roster. Like, he doesn't turn 22 until what is it? We're recording June 12th here. It's like 15 days.
Yeah, June 27th. Like that. Yeah.
Yeah. So like, and we've had the same conversation. If you take Kelee Ringo now and you were to insert him into the draft, a few months ago.
Good point.
Like, that's I don't know, where does he go? For sure, it's much higher than he was drafted originally, but like first round pick, second round pick at the latest, I would think. So yeah, you've got a lot of potential with Kelee Ringo, and he's also got that year under his belt. So I don't know. I wouldn't put it out of the question. I still feel like Slay, probably is that guy. But the luxury is we're not having to rely on, as last season, as opposed to last season. It's like, hey, what happens? If James Bradberry, when he did start slipping, well, who do you turn to? There was not near that depth. Now it's like, okay, you better be playing at the top of your game, because if you're not, there is a list of players that are waiting to get onto the field that can make a difference.
And that's not to say Isaiah Rodgers wasn't great. He was the main starter during OTAs, and then they kind of did a little shuffle with Ringo going to be the starter during minicamp. Maybe that's just wanting to see both players get starting reps in what are essentially the same things: voluntary OTAs, mandatory minicamp. Like, it's all basically the same stuff. No pads. It's really put your PJs on, because at least that's what Bobby King said. They got to get the pads on to actually start hitting. Either way, though, they love both of them, and they still like Quinyon Mitchell. There's nothing against Quinyon Mitchell, but I think there was a really good point made on WIP. I forget who they were interviewing, one of the beat writers, who said Vic Fangio has no reason to force Quinyon Mitchell to be out there if he's not ready because of the depth. This was last year. Quinyon Mitchell starts maybe by week 4 or 5 due to James Bradberry just having a terrible season. This year, though, they can run through Ringo, then they can switch over to Rodgers, and then they can go to Quinyon Mitchell if, heaven forbid, all of the corners look absolutely terrible, but we don't expect that to go ahead and happen. I do want to mention we are going to announce the winner of our Devontae Smith meet and greet during a celebrity softball game during the show tonight, right, Josh? It's going to happen live.
Yes, it will. We got it ready.
There you go. So a little bit later on, sub to both channels. That's kind of the ticker to get you in for an entry, and then we're going to give that away, and it's a chance to meet Devontae Smith, get a picture with him at his celebrity softball game. So could be a lot of fun there.
Lots of fun, yes, and hopefully, good luck to everybody. We don't get to decide on this, obviously, because it's a random picker. You'll see, but if you had one question, because it's the meet and greet, this is interesting for people that may get the chance to win this. You're probably only going to have time to ask him maybe one question.
Yeah.
One question, if you could ask Smitty, I'm putting you on the spot, but one question to be able to ask your guy. I mean, he's in the background there.
Yeah, people, he is. He's over here. Yeah.
If you were going to ask him a question, what would you ask him?
See, it's so tough because like the YouTube channel host in me wants to ask about Kellen Moore's offense, because he seems to be the real key to unlocking Kellen Moore's offense, because he's going to be the guy who moves a ton in motion. He'll work out of the slot, work out of the outside, and I'd love to get kind of a longer form answer than what the media's gotten out of him in terms of, what do you think of Kellen Moore's offense? And he's like, it's pretty good, Like, I'd love to know a little bit more about what he truly thinks about it. Other than that, though, I mean, what do you ask, right? Because you don't want to be a weirdo. You don't want to ask some sort of serious personal question.
True.
You don't want to waste your question being like, what are you doing this summer? I don't know. That's tough. Is there anything that you would ask him?
It'd be kind of to the similar sense of what you're saying there. It's difficult because I'm sure we've all been at a certain point where there's a little bit of, whether it's starstruck or you're very limited on time, which that would be me, of like, I don't want to. Yeah, he's got tons of stuff he's doing. Yeah. It's a very quick. I appreciate the time getting to meet him. But yeah, I would probably want to, have a little bit more of insight. Is he going to give you some information there? Probably not. I mean, it's similar to running into really any athlete. Like it's just a real quick intro. Like I think the first one that comes to mind for me is Bijan last year, because Bijan Robinson at the golf tournament, I saw him. I'm like, and ask him, what does he think of Philly? I'm hoping for this really insightful answer, or something. And it's just like, we'll see, love it.
Nothing.
We'll see. It's like, okay, basically nothing there. So But yes, to your point, I would be very interested to get a legit answer of Kellen Moore's offense, and also like, will we see the new wrinkles of him possibly being in the slot a little bit more often? How much is the motion going to affect things? I don't know. We'll see. I've seen some comments saying people are thinking he's going to have a breakout year, which then my reply to that is, what does a breakout year
what does
mean?
that look
Because
like?
he's been to an extreme level at this point. I mean, like, all pro, leading the league in yards, and like, I mean, ridiculous. It's possible, but like, then you have AJ Brown too. So I don't know. There's only so much to go around, but just to meet Smitty, get a picture with him, everything else be really cool. So
that'll happen within the hours. We are always live here for an hour on Wednesday, and of course, Josh has dinner with his lovely wife for her birthday, and so we're not going to run a little bit over as we normally do. Super chat in here from Justin with a 20, helping pay for Josh's dinner tonight. He says, "I'm hoping Slay can win a ring here. I was excited when we traded for him, pretty much a bag of chips, and hoping he follows in Jason Kelce and Aaron Donald retires. Well, he's still one of the best at corner." I think I would totally agree there. I mean, at the same point, no one dislikes Darius Slay. I think he gets a little bit more hate because of him becoming a little more active on social media with the podcast at the volume during the Eagles slide. And I think Slay, his personality in general, is very joyful, boisterous. And so the Eagles are losing terrible games, and Slay's like, it's okay. And we're all like, no, Slay, it's not okay. And so it was kind of like a bad timing in terms of starting his own little media podcast thing. But in the end, yes, he struggled a lot, and I went back and watched that Niner game, and like every pass was in front of Darius Slay. It was crazy. It was Darius Slay and Eli Ricks just getting cooked that game, and he wasn't great in the Cardinal game either, but he still is, I mean, a top 10, 15 cornerback in the league, and so until he just clearly doesn't have any gas left in the legs, like Richard Sherman got to the point where it was like, this guy is so washed. Slay is not there yet. I think he would be after the 2024 season. Until he gets there, then, he's still the starter, and he's still obviously fantastic.
Yes, and appreciate the 20, by the way, Justin. But also, we don't forget either that Slay had the knee surgery last year, and
that's a good point.
It's like you still never know how much it hinders someone, but to go to the extent of having surgery, it was something, and he said he was playing through the pain. Yeah. So that's the other part that I'll be curious of. Now, again, I love Slay, and this is in his personality, but like saying, hey, I'm winning all these races, like we'll see who beats me, Isaiah Rodgers, and then Isaiah Rodgers comes back, like, okay, let's chill with that. There's a certain limit, where he can go, but he says that the speed is back, the energy is back in the legs, so maybe so. You make one last, if it is a season or 2 seasons, whatever, but it would be cool what he's done. I hear you, because we also had this conversation quite a bit. We're like, look, I can appreciate the fact that he's keeping things light, but there's a certain point where it's like, I don't care anymore, especially with the missed tackles and everything else. Right. It's like, why are you telling us that you had a good game? Sure, analytics said you did have a good game. The team as a whole was terrible. So I get the back and forth, but yes, in reality, I think most everyone's on the same page of like, yes, could we get him a ring? Could we get a ring for several of the players? Please. Sure. That would be great.
I'm curious to your thoughts on Vic Fangio after what we basically saw during OTAs, and we only got very little in terms of Vic Fangio media access. We all keep using the same one clip that somebody filmed. I forget which reporter it was of Vic Fangio standing on the sideline. Like, there's been very little in terms of Vic Fangio as an Eagle, right? We have no pictures of him, on Google, Vic Fangio wearing Eagles gear yet, which is pretty crazy. I keep getting this whole thought, though, in terms of Vic Fangio's defense. It's no BS, like Jordan Davis said, but it's no BS in the fact that he doesn't care about any of these players in terms of who they were. All he cares about is who's going to be the best for his system, right? This whole idea of like, oh, well, clearly Josh Sweat should get the most reps because he's the most senior pass rusher, or the best pass rusher with Hassan Reddick gone, and Bryce Huff is new, or, oh, C.J. Gardner-Johnson this versus, Reed Blankenship that. I really got the feeling with all the rotation on defense, especially at linebacker, Nakobe Dean getting, kind of dumped for Zack Baun for the majority of OTA snaps, that Fangio doesn't care about any of these guys, who's the stars and who's not, and he's going to put out the best 11 that he thinks truly Philadelphia has, whether he's actually going to be able to, find them or not.
I totally agree. I'm right there with you. I mean, you got to love the fact that it's not really a playing favorites. There's some guys that, sure, that what they've done, what they've proven, they're probably coming already in with a little bit of like a Slay, for example. He's probably at the top of the leaderboard there, but it's still, hey, you got to prove it to me. You got to show me that you can bring that day in and day out. I totally agree. I think it's this defense that we saw that was lacking identity for so long, but also lacking a, I don't know, swift kick in the Rear, I guess we'll keep
There
it
you go.
PG, but
There you
like,
go.
they'll be able to have something like that where there's a guy that's holding them accountable, but also someone that they can respect and has already earned that, right? Because we talk about like the resume that he has and everyone knows him. He's the father of the system that he has and all this other stuff. But what I've loved to hear also is the players talking about Fangio like structuring the defense to their strengths. And
Mhm.
so it's like, look, if you could go out there and prove something to him, if he sees like you're one of the top at call whatever it is at blitzing the passer, at coverage as a linebacker, whatever the case may be, then he's all of a sudden going to go, all right, you're my guy. Like we're going to keep on trying this until it doesn't work. And so I do like that because I think beforehand, a lot of people, we certainly saw several different articles and write-ups and everything else, and this may still be the case. However, you brought up Nakobe Dean. We saw lots of talk of, hey, Nakobe Dean is going to be the guy. And that was the natural speculation. But then from
Yeah.
that first press conference, you walked away from it and you went, this is Vic Fangio. This is not a Nick Sirianni. If Nick Sirianni said that about Zack Baun, I'd go, yeah, whatever. Like, because
Right.
he's going to talk positive about everyone. It
Right.
won't matter. He talked positive about Rashad Penny, and the guy got 3 carries all season. But this is Vic Fangio. Like, Vic Fangio does not blow smoke, as we said. And so the fact that he said that was like, wait a second. He doesn't care to, like you just said there, perfect way to say it, doesn't care where you've come from, doesn't care what you've done, doesn't care about your pedigree really even. It's what can you do in this system and how do I see your ability with the athleticism? Heck, he wanted to draft a guy from Houston Christian. Like, he loved Jalen
Yeah.
Hunt. We hope that
Yeah.
that pans out. But he doesn't really take the same mold of, hey, give me a power 5 just because it's power 5. Now, sometimes that can hurt you, sure. But I do like the fact that he's taking look at these players and going, Howie, I know that Nakobe's your guy. That does not mean that does not give him a leg up on the competition at all. So we will see with Nakobe. Who knows what happened with James Bradberry and all the others on the roster. Bryce Huff, that he probably wanted based on some acquisition there, but is he going to be able to live up to the expectation? A
Sure.
lot of unknowns, a lot of guys that are kind of like they have potential, but we talk about this all the time. It's like they have potential and a chip on their shoulder. But as far as, do they have a lot of proven measurables or stats or accolades or things like that? Not necessarily, but you love that hunger. And so I think this defense is going to be certainly a lot more aggressive. I keep going and wrestling with like, is it going to be like a top 15 defense? Is it going to be top 10? I really don't know yet where I would fall on that, but I am optimistic. And yes, it can't be much worse than last year, but I'm optimistic in the sense of the guys are taking the coaching. They're hungry to prove something. And a lot of the rookies too, especially with a Kelee Ringo, I think that we can't forget is like even the glimpses that we saw with a Kelee Ringo, we got to remember that's with him having 2 defensive coordinators in the middle of the year in a collapse and all this drama and
Mhm.
everything else that's going on, plus the injuries and rotations at slot corner and all the other guys going down. So it was a complete cluster. And now you get some more like consistency, a guy that you could trust leading the defense. So I'm very optimistic, but I think it'll be an adjusting and evolving defense as we've seen too. It's not necessarily a Fangio off ball and that's it. He's playing to the guy's strengths, which is obviously a benefit.
It's a great point that I feel like very few media members have mentioned in terms of the development of all the rookies last year and some of the younger guys on the defense. I mean, how much was Sean Desai coaching these guys? And that's not a ripping of Sean Desai, but do we think Sean Desai is some
Right.
sort of, defensive mastermind? Is Matt Patricia a defensive mastermind? No. And very clearly, it wasn't just the defensive coordinator, it's all the assistants as well. They got rid of everybody. And now it feels like you have real teachers in there in terms of defensive coaches and defensive coordinators, right? It feels like Clint Hurt could really work with the defensive tackles and defensive ends. It feels like Bobby King has plenty of knowledge in developing young linebackers and maybe getting the most out of Devin White, right? He did the same thing with Zach Cunningham when he was in Tennessee. And then you bring
Mhm.
in the secondary coaches and then, of course, defensive coordinator as a whole. It feels like there's a ton of opportunity to learn and grow. And if you're one of these young players like a Kelee Ringo or a rookie Quinyon Mitchell or Cooper DeJean, you can just be a sponge. And I think Kelee kind of talked about this during his one press conference last week that he's just trying to learn as quickly as possible. That way the game slows down and he doesn't have to think so much when he's actually on the football field because he already knows instinctively what he's supposed to do. And I felt like last year they were all trying to think about what they needed to do and then the play would start happening and then they would have to react while also being like, okay, am I supposed to be over here? And that's why the
Mhm.
final 6 games of the year, it was blown coverages. People were wide open. The Niner game is a great example of guys just running wild over the Eagle defense, and the Bucs game too, that I just don't think you're going to have happen this season. Is it a top 10 defense, top 15 defense? I don't know. Obviously, we need minicamp, or I should say training camp. We need preseason. We need all the fun that comes in August, but very excited to see exactly what's going to happen with that. But, overall, you get really good vibes from the Eagles over the past couple of days and past couple of weeks. I am curious, though, your take on the Nick Sirianni, Jalen Hurts beef that apparently is going to be the talking point of all, local media members, including the radio stations, for the next couple of days. You did a show on it yesterday. I got to watch half of that show. I didn't get to finish it, though. Is it much to do about nothing, or did you think there was something there in Hurts' non-answer on what Nick Sirianni does well right now?
To me, it's very little about nothing. Maybe it's not nothing about nothing, but it's very little about nothing. You can make the argument. You can certainly make the case. Sure. Could Jalen have said something a little bit different? Maybe so. But at the same time, and Anthony DeBona even brought this up whenever we had an interview, but like saying, how often does Jalen really even go out of his way for anyone of a lot of high praise? Really, he doesn't say much even about like, hey, AJ Brown and him are apparently best friends, right? Like godfather to each other's kids and like all that situation. But sometimes when they get asked, or he gets asked like, hey, what do you think about AJ? Very little. Like, yep, he's staying focused. He's keeping the main thing. And it's kind of like, you could ask a lot of other quarterbacks about their receiver and they would rave about the guy. And that's not to say that Hurts is, not wanting to give AJ attention or anything else. That's just not his personality. And so to me, I'm like, it's not a huge deal. You got to believe that Jalen is also knowing and understanding, especially after last season, whatever he says is going to be twisted, is going to be put out there by the media, and then all of a sudden it's going to be getting blown out of proportion. Yeah. So he could have also been sitting there going, as he said, I don't know exactly how to answer that one, of like, what do I say so you guys don't take this and run with it and blow it out of proportion? And so, sure, does it come out and once he says it, make it weird or awkward or whatever? Maybe so, because the speculation already of the guys not getting along or Sirianni losing the locker room and all these other, reports or rumors or things like that came out right around the playoffs or right after the playoffs. But to me, it's like, I'm not buying it. I think it's an off-season topic. We got to talk about it, right? So something happens. Oh my gosh, this is terrible. The team is going to be fine. Jalen is locked in. I don't believe. I think it was Joe DeCamera who said that he believes that Lurie is ticked off at Jalen for that press. I think that's a little bit of a stretch to say Lurie watched that and was like, oh my gosh, there's my franchise quarterback not getting on board. He's going to be okay. Was it maybe the best thing to say from a just strictly PR stance? Probably not, because you're going to have these media outlets do it. But is it a sound the alarms? Not even close. I'm not concerned about it. The team's going to be fine. But again, we're in June, and kind of as we talked about, it was like May is Kenny Pickett outperforming Jalen Hurts. June is Nick Sirianni and Jalen Hurts. July will be something else with Jalen. So it's just going to keep on going into the season, unfortunately, and that's just the way things are. But
I always
it's
like
not
to
a big deal.
Paint a picture for people who maybe aren't in the media world like you and I really used to be. And I mean, YouTubers are different than radio hosts or column writers, but we've been there and done that. Like you said, it's June. If you are a local Philadelphia column writer, sports radio host, what are you talking about? The Phillies are on game 66 of 162, right? I mean, you're not even halfway through the MLB season. How much do these games actually matter? Okay, there's one talking point. The Eagles have nothing over the next, 6 weeks. The Sixers have nothing because the NBA Finals are happening right now. There's nothing going on. I mean, truly, there is nothing going on. And so what do you want to talk about, right? You just want to have random conversations about the Kyrie
Olympic
Irving
prep
and stuff? Yeah, it's just ridiculous.
Talk about Devin Allen for
6
weeks or something. But
so you got to talk about something, and this is what they're doing. Same thing with the New York media right now with Aaron Rodgers. Telling the Jets months ago, I'm going on this trip, not knowing the mandatory minicamps were going to be today and tomorrow. And then he was like, hey, I'm not going to make it. I told you guys I wouldn't be there. And the media is acting like Aaron Rodgers has just shot every member of the Jets team and flown away to Europe and like some sort of getaway plane. He's just like, he's not there for mandatory minicamp. Like, what is going on? But we've got to talk about something. So, there's got to be some sort of conversations that are happening out there, and that's the whole Jalen Sirianni thing. Do I think Jalen and Nick Sirianni are BFFs? No, I don't think anybody thinks that. Do I think they hate each other, or Jeffrey Lurie's mad at Jalen Hurts for, like you said, not praising the Sirianni, but not ripping Sirianni? No, I don't think it's a big deal. I don't think Jalen's friends with a bunch of people. I think that kind of came out during the course of last year's, 6-game losing streak, where it was like Jalen's buddies with a couple people, but he's not like a big, warm, I love everybody sort of guy like some quarterbacks are and a lot of quarterbacks aren't. I think he has his boys. He rides with A.J. Brown very clearly, and that's basically it. And so, at this point, it is what it is, and all we care about is winning and losing. And at this point, they haven't done any winning and we're losing, and so there's not much to go ahead and freak out about.
But again, like you say, there's something that we have to talk about. So
Sure.
it gets blown out of proportion, and
Sure.
unfortunately, it's the topic. But it's almost like Groundhog Day, because whenever I saw the notification come up or whatever it was on WIP first, I was like, hang on. Are we in January again? Like, this
Nope.
feels like we talked about, we got all this hashed out back in
Yeah.
January. What's going on here? Like, we're gonna just stir this thing back up. But again, to your point, it's the offseason. There's something to be talking about. Speaking of, because again, it is the off season and these speculation or camp battles that we're talking about.
Yeah.
Shout out to James, because he brings up an interesting point that I've seen a couple individuals. I think Ruben Frank had also put this out there. He's like half-heartedly believing, but James says Dean is still being rolled in slowly. I'm betting once camp comes, we'll know more about the depth chart. Right now, he's trying everyone, but keeping all safe for camp. Now,
Maybe.
I could get it because of Lisfranc injury, and you want to maybe ease someone in. However, like, it's not like Nakobe wasn't getting any reps. He was getting most all of the second team reps, which means he was still getting a very significant portion. If you were saying like, we don't want you to go full speed, or we want to play it safe on the foot.
Yeah.
Like, they're still pros. I know it's second string, but they're still pros, and you're flying around the field as much as, physically possible in OTAs. But still, like, if there's a slow him into it or kind of, rolling into the side, it's, I don't know. Like, I get the point there. Are you buying that though? I believe and agree that yes, training camp will tell us more, but are you buying it of you slow him or kind of slowly get him into this for some reason?
I mean, the Liz Frank is something. It's not nothing. And he said during his one media availability, a couple weeks ago, that he's not quite but close. And very clearly, he wasn't really out there during OTAs, and he is out there during minicamp. So sure, they're trying to slow him down, but like you said, not like the second teamers are going slower or less hard than the first teamers. Doesn't make any sense. I think there are some well-known Eagles, I did a couple of shows on this the past couple of days, who are in jeopardy heading into training camp. And I think it's a very clear list. Doesn't mean they're going to get cut, but it might mean they're not going to get starting playing time or a lot of reps. I think James Bradberry, for sure, that's an easy one. We all know James Bradberry doesn't really seem to want to be in Philadelphia. At least that would be my argument, not based on any insider knowledge. It's a guess. But James Bradberry, very clearly somebody who's probably not starting a cornerback this offseason. The writing's on the wall. Kenny Gainwell loses a lot of reps to Saquon Barkley. Will Shipley has an impressive, according to reports, minicamp. His reps are definitely in jeopardy after a lackluster year. Dean is another one, though. Nakobe Dean was supposed to be the steal of his draft. He falls for some reason, and he's going to be a starter in Philadelphia, and we figured out the linebacker issue because the Eagles never draft linebacker high, and they still got Dean in the third round. And there were moments, you think back to that, Cleveland Brown preseason game where he knocks the ball out of the running back's hand at the goal line, and then the tackle of Derrick Henry 2 years ago in 2022. Like, there were little flashes, but Nakobe Dean hasn't lived up to it being a third-round draft pick, and you can make the argument he's been a bust. And injuries play a part of whether you are a bust or not. If he can stay healthy for an entire season, will he be good? I don't know, but he's definitely in some sort of jeopardy, or else he'd be running with the first teams. We wouldn't be thinking about it, versus losing to two guys who were not Eagles last year at all in Zack, Baun, and Devin White. I think Eli Ricks is another name there, Josh. We've both talked about Eli Ricks. He was the golden boy of preseason last year. Has some pretty decent games, especially the Miami Dolphin game that you and I were both at. He was kind of thrust in there and played well at cornerback at the end, covering Tyreek Hill. You put on the Niner tape, you put on the Cardinal tape, you put on, the Giant tape at the end of the year. Eli Ricks doesn't look good. He looks really bad. He got beat up a lot in those games, and now he's cornerback 6, cornerback 7. Like, there are plenty of names that we all know that aren't fifth-string guys, people who are not going to make the roster, who are definitely in jeopardy and need to have some serious moments in training camp in order to win battles, just to not only be first-teamers, but even second-teamers.
Yeah, you're right. It's because we talked about this also with the fact that, Eli Ricks, especially in camp, he's really never, in his very brief limited history, has not shown the level of, like it's every single time last year during training. He was like, Eli Ricks, not a great performance. Eli Ricks not doing well. Eli Ricks struggling during camp. And we're going to the preseason game saying, all right, well, let's see something, because Eli Ricks is going to get to start. But like, is he going to do anything? Then obviously the pick 6, and he made some plays. So then we're saying, all right, he just, when the lights come on, he starts playing better, which that's fine. You know what?
Sure.
Practice is just practice. It's, not really a big deal to some people. So if he can turn the page on that and say, all right, utilize or kind of take advantage of his game time, maybe he can do something there. But again, to your point, it's like, there's already some tape now you can look back to. Granted, we take that probably, I'm sure Fangio does if he's even looking at any of it, but a little bit of a grain of salt of like, well, this is a nightmare as we were talking about before. But the difference this season is, like you said, it's the depth there that even if Eli Ricks goes out there and performs well in preseason, there's so many guys that he's having to compete with. Whereas last year it was like, hey, you go out there and compete, great. Okay, yeah, you just won a job. There's not a ton of guys that he had to compete with. This is, hey, we've got like 4 valid options who can start, let alone like 7 guys who can very easily take a roster spot over you. So yeah, it's a very big uphill battle. Before the draft, I was talking about it saying like, it doesn't make sense. You know, some people going, oh, Eli Ricks might not have a chance to make the roster. I was like, yeah, he'll be fine. After the draft,
yeah,
I mean, yeah, he's got to be in jeopardy of that because of, like you say, the play that he has. And then also these other guys he's going to be competing with, it's going to take quite a bit, which will be shocking because, shocking in the sense of like, hey, that was a guy that very surprised to get him as a UDFA. You could not cut him because if you did, teams are going to claim him. And still, again, we talk about it. It feels like Eli Ricks, if and when he gets cut, he'll be one of those players that you see get claimed quickly because he was highly touted. He, thinks you possibly still has some game. Eli Ricks, big play Ricks, or big pick. What is it? Big or pick 6 Ricks. That's it. I'm trying to combine big play Slay with Eli Ricks.
Yep.
There we go. That sounds, I was like, that didn't sound correct, but we share a birthday together. So there's an extra affinity there. Cause I had this thought of like, I guess I could still send him like happy birthday, but he retweeted it last year. So, but I just don't see a way that he could make the roster quite honestly. As of today, you look at the guys because in the slot, I don't think we saw limited action. Maybe you could try to work something. I just don't think that's his play. So then you just say, well, the competition is outside. But again, we listed all the different names there. The only way is what you'd keep 8 cornerbacks.
Yeah, it's too many.
Certainly not 9, but even 8 seems like it's a ridiculous amount.
Yeah, because you got to think 5, 6 wide receivers, and Britton Covey is the Eli Ricks of the offense. He did some good things at special teams last year, but can you play wide receiver, Britton? Because Ainias Smith and Johnny Wilson and Parris Campbell and John Ross, they're all battling for your spots. So that's going to be very interesting in terms of the special teams and wide receiver 3 battle as well. Quickly, Benjamin Moore with a 5 here. Keep up the great work. You guys get better every year. Love the platform. Go Birds from, how do you say that?
Let's go.
Living in LA.
Cinnamon. I suppose so.
I've never heard of that place in California, but I haven't really been to California more than like twice. So it is what it is. See you in November. All right, there you go. Shout out to Benjamin Moore there. Speaking of retweeting people, everyone noticed that T.J. Gardner-Johnson apparently was at least maybe got a little preview of Josh's show. It was some random fan who's watching Josh's show on his Instagram story, tagged C.J. Gardner-Johnson, and then C.J. put it on his Instagram story. So it's like a couple layers deep of Twitter or Instagram inception here, but technically, he did see it.
Technically, he saw it. And actually, I did a little bit more digging. That apparently is one of C.J. Gardner-Johnson. I don't know if that's his main trainer or it's just one of them, but he's got a lot of video clips of C.J. Gardner-Johnson in training. So I don't know. But we'll see. Reached out. Maybe we get an interview with him on here. That would be great. But so far, remains to be seen. But the fact that players are watching, they're watching. Pretty cool. Pretty
cool. What was the other one here? Let's see. What was the other quote that I got to scroll back up to this one? Oh, what do you think? Jeremiah Trotter Jr., right? When we talk about Nakobe Dean, Trotter Jr. was, besides Jalix Hunt, Trotter Jr. was like the only other rookie that nobody talked about during minicamp and OTAs. And I guess, Trevor Keegan, but Keegan is later on draft pick. He was a little bit banged up. He's wearing a leg sleeve. And we don't have pads on, offensive linemen. Like, what do you have? They barely
However, let's just say real quickly, Trevor Keegan, as far as the YouTuber goes, there's not a better, more photogenic player in terms of making like thumbnails for Trevor Keegan. Let's just be honest about that.
He does.
Whether or not he's going to be playing on the field, but the pictures there are iconic.
I would agree with that.
So, but yes, I agree with you. Back to Trotter.
Dean, though, I mean, if you're Nakobe Dean, you're not only looking up, I think you're looking back because we didn't hear a lot about Jeremiah Trotter Jr., but when we did, it was like extremely smart, way ahead of where he's supposed to be, making calls on defense, and you kind of sit back and go, 3 years at Clemson, grew up watching his father, probably being taught by his father, learning from one of the best. He's probably a lot further along than your average 5th-round linebacker at this point during his rookie offseason. Maybe so.
I don't know. I can see the point there, and I could certainly understand as far as like the IQ, what he brings to the table. He was obviously like tailor-made for Philly for so many reasons, and like you just listed. But it's like, I still would say, as of right now, because of the list rank, I don't believe the list rank is enough to, the whole second string, first string thing that we were just talking about. But I would say it's still going to be Nakobe as of right now. Would I be shocked though if after training camp we're saying, okay, well, he's fallen even further now? No, I wouldn't, because of Fangio's scheme for sure. Like, he's really looking for that versatility, and Nakobe can do well when he's downhill, he's making tackles. He struggles in coverage. Like, I mean, let's just be honest. Like, I think most everyone understands that, but he has struggled in coverage. And so limited snaps, sure, you can make the case and argument that he's been injured. So do we know to the full extent of his coverage ability? Okay, maybe not necessarily, but we've seen some. I would argue enough to know that he's not a stellar linebacker in coverage. And so if Fangio's looking at that and saying, look, I want more versatility. I want guys who can, yes, rush the passer at times on a blitz, who can still be able to stop the run, but also be able to drop in coverage. Or if it's a combination of, hey, he sees that, you know what Devin White does well, Baun can complement that and they can play off of each other. It could be that scenario. So it's he's getting boxed out because of what he brings or the lack of what he brings to the field. But I don't know. As of right now, that's why I say I would still lean towards Nakobe is that next man up, but there's still a long way to go. As difficult as it is for rookies to make an impact, certainly for the linebacker spot, but for Trotter, it's a different pedigree, as you say. And so if all of a sudden he were thrust into action or he's making plays, it's not impossible from what we've seen from Nakobe, from Jeremiah Trotter. I won't count it out, but still, as of right now, I'd probably Nakobe slightly over. So we'll see. I don't know.
Weedosaurus Rex does make a pretty good point here. He did say if Trot starts, it would speak volumes about the talent at middle linebacker. Yeah, okay. We agree with that. Devin White, I mean, we have put our entire hope in terms of the center of the Eagles defense into Devin White. But I do, and massive question mark, because he did get benched at the end of last year by a Todd Bowles defense who, credited with being one of the better defensive-minded coaches in the league. But at least so far, if you want a positive note from the linebacker spot, White seems to be very clearly LB1. Like, Fangio has already locked on and is like, this is my linebacker one, likes everything about him, and the battle really is Baun versus everybody else, but still it seems like Baun has been elevated as well.
Yes, right there with you. And the fact that you made the acquisition, right? Like you kind of somewhat writing on the wall, not entirely, but somewhat writing on the wall whenever they make acquisitions or signings, and timing wise, because it's like Fangio comes on board and one of the first signings is Zack Baun. Now that it's immediately like, oh, hey, he's Andrew Van Ginkel-esque type of player. Where is he going to be utilized? Everyone immediately, and understandably so, is like, hey, he's going to play edge. He'll be backup edge, but he'll bring some pass rush. That's fine. That's great. Everything there. Fangio all along. I mean, what this tells me is not, hey, we got to see them because it was, it's in voluntary OTAs where he initially said it's not. You didn't get to see this guy for months and go, oh, maybe let's try you off ball. He saw something that from the very beginning, he goes, he can play off ball linebacker.
Yeah.
That there's potential there. Now, did he think maybe from the very beginning that this is a potential starter? Who knows? But he saw enough potential to go, yep, maybe so. And then Devin White was still an option, right? Working out the contracts, Howie probably having several negotiations there. But seeing everything that he sees on tape, Vic Fangio going, there you go. That's a linebacker that I want. That's someone that I can use, certainly within the system. So you're right. We're putting all of our eggs in one basket in terms of that does feel like the very clear cut. There's your guy. There's your most likely captain, green dot wearer, going to be in charge of the defense. If he returns to the all-pro level, and I've seen tons of, comments from individuals here in the chat and other live streams and other shows and everything else. I'm sure you've seen the same, but it's like Devin White could end up being the most underrated signing by far. I mean, if he plays up to the level, he doesn't have to be an all-pro, but if he plays, he doesn't even have to be a Pro Bowler, quite honestly, but if he plays up to those levels, it could be unreal as far as the signing and what he brings to the defense, especially because, as we're talking about here, if Devin White is not there, like, how good do we feel? If all of a sudden I said to you and I was like, hey, Nakobe Dean and Zack Baun, I guess, are your starting linebackers?
Yeah.
Like, I don't know what to do with that. Hopefully so. Hopefully they find something, but there's a lot of question marks, even though there's still question marks with Devin White, but it gets even more drastic on that side without those. So I don't know. Though that's one of those storylines that we're going to keep monitoring and see.
Sure.
I am believing in Devin White. I think both of you and I have talked about this before. He's shown the ability, and he's still young. He's got the athleticism. This is not a Shaq Leonard type of deal. He just has to get to that next level, and he's got the mentality of it. I think if you take a look at his press conferences, the vibes in the team, everything else, he mentioned it's different, but it's like he has the weight off of him in terms of trying to be that lawyer about his contract and all the other situations. Now it's just like, hey, you know what? I'm here. Let's go play football.
Yeah. The problem is the bar is just so low as Eagle fans for linebackers, right?
Sure.
We have elevated TJ Edwards into being like this generational Eagle linebacker because he was just the only linebacker in the past decade to be like semi-decent, right? Like Kaiser White got elevated to be he's so good. Michael Kendricks was like the greatest outside linebacker in the history of the NFL because he was a very good, quick, fast, smart linebacker in Philadelphia. We just don't have those things. And so, you know, you get Devin White in there, and we all immediately are just praying and hoping, please just live up to the expectation of TJ Edwards. And it's such low in terms of overall expectations, but we're all just dying to have a good linebacker in Philadelphia. It is interesting, though.
Because we're starved.
We are starved. I mean we've got so many good players everywhere else. Fangio, though, his defenses have not been linebacker focused. There hasn't been a star on a Fangio defense that plays linebacker other than Josie Jewell, who is very TJ Edwards-esque, right? You know, gets a lot of tackles. He's not considered a top 10 linebacker in the league. You know, he's been very good at corner. He's been fantastic at edge rusher. Those have been the two big Fangio things that he's done during his time, whether it's Denver, and obviously Chicago had some really good cornerbacks and really good pass rushers, and even Miami, they were a little older, but the cornerbacks were the focus, and the edge rushers like a Bradley Chubb were kind of the main guys, you know, Van Ginkel as well on the edge. So if you're worried about linebacker, just know that I think Fangio hopefully, you know, has guys that he at least knows can run his defense, and that's the main focus there. So
there's some positives on that side, but it'll also be interesting on the flip side of the ball. We're talking about, you know, just guys who made a name for themselves or at least winning the camp and everything. I'm interested because we hear about all these other players, right? And the wide receiver 3, Parris Campbell getting the first team reps, Ainias Smith. When will he, if he's slowly coming back, the injury that he suffered there, the fractured shin, I think the fractured shin that he had. So slowly getting back in, he did get a couple reps. He's got a very long uphill battle. It would be surprising, I think, to most everybody if he were to win the job. It's not impossible, but we look at this wide receiver 4 or outside backup receiver, whatever you want to call it, and you say there's a John Ross potential. And then also Johnny Wilson. Now, again, we say that it's hard for rookies to make an impact, hard for them to see the field. But Johnny Wilson is one of those that is a very unique, rare individual. It's hard to peg Johnny Wilson because of what he brings and his size. But I'm curious to get your thoughts because there was a specific play, apparently, at the last day of mandatory minicamp that he made a play on Isaiah Rodgers. It was in some sort of a red zone situation. And so people have been mentioning already, I'm sure you've got a million comments also, hey, we got to get red zone package. Johnny Wilson, 6'7", 235. He can jump out of the gym. Insert him there. Now, I don't know that Kellen Moore is going to, you know, devise up something specific because you have a ton of great options in the red zone without Johnny Wilson. But the fact that he was able to beat Isaiah Rodgers and utilizing his skill of saying, hey, Isaiah Rodgers was basically in perfect position, but he's taking advantage of that. That's the continued thing that you'd want to see, obviously. And the fact that he's going to be there learning from A.J. Brown, learning from Devontae Smith. He needs to get a little bit better with separation. And I don't know how you necessarily get away from dropping the football if you did that a lot in college. So hopefully he can shore that up. But takeaways from Johnny Wilson, especially within Kellen Moore's offense, and I don't know, there's hype on everyone for sure. But when you get like a unique player like him, it's just really hard to even grasp or put into terms.
Yeah, I mean, the problem that I have is that I really feel like Parris Campbell is wide receiver 3. Like, it's going to take a monumental movement from one of the other receivers during training camp or during, you know, preseason games to actually be the true wide receiver 3. And even then, Campbell will still probably get more snaps. You mix people in at 4 and 5 and move people around in terms of whatever set you have on offense. Wilson, though, to me, it goes back to this whole high bar for giant receivers, because the bar for giant receivers, it's like, maybe you had Doral Green Beckham, who was supposed to be this big, massive target. He never worked out. J.J. Arcega-Whiteside was supposed to be the jump out of the gym sort of red zone target. We know how bad that was. And now you bring in Johnny Wilson, who, you know, sounds great, like 6'6", 6'7", some people say. You stand close enough to him there. It may be, but I think the best thing about the current wide receiver room, besides the fact they all learn under AJ and Devontae Smith, is the fact that I think we at least have enough decent players to where the third and fourth quarters of preseason games can be semi-interesting. Because normally during a preseason game,
That's
a
true.
lot of collegiate receivers who are trying to make a roster in the NFL are not good enough, and you have quarterbacks throwing to people who, they have no rhythm, they have no timing, and it's just really rough to watch during the preseason. I think you're going to have a lot of fun watching preseason games, streamed by us as well, a little subtle plug there, where you get to see Johnny Wilson play in the fourth quarter, and John Ross try to come back and make a roster, and it's no longer just us waiting to see if Devin Allen does something the past couple of years. He's like the only one where we were like, ooh, another receiver, and now you have 4 or 5. I think Ngata has definitely stood out during OTAs and minicamp. Obviously, Ainias Smith's going to be healthy. The receiving core is going to be a lot more fun to watch during the preseason, but I do think it's Parris Campbell's job to lose, and it's like a really long shot in terms of him actually losing that one.
Yeah. I'm totally with you on that. The wide receiver 3, no question. I'm just, like you say, curious to see if and how Johnny Wilson might see the field. But yeah, again, a great point as far as preseason. And also, better QB2. So when we see Mariota airmail just about everything in preseason, it'd be interesting because you'll get a good or a better look at your wide receivers too. So that will be more exciting because it seemed like a lot of run plays and Mariota take the ball and just take off and run. Not much in preseason. Maybe we'll see more than that.
Yeah, we'll see. Okay, we got about 13 minutes left till the top of the hour. Josh is going to get ready, and we're going to give away our one ticket to the Devontae Smith celebrity softball game and the meet and greet. So you can go up and get a picture with Devontae Smith. One lucky winner here is going to do that. Obviously, with subscribers here, randomly selecting somebody in terms of the winner. And then if you do win, you got to shoot either me or Josh an email and prove who you are. We do giveaways all the time. It should be easy by now. You guys know the drill. And then we'll get you the tickets sent out. It'd be nice if you win and that you're going to go, right? If you're randomly selected and you aren't able to go, let us know. We can maybe give you something different. Josh and I haven't talked about that, but majority of you guys are in Philadelphia, but a lot aren't. So if you win and you're not going to go, let us know because we might give it to somebody who is going to go. But either way, let's go ahead and give it. Is it ready? I see it here. Can I throw it up?
Yes. Yep. It should be good.
You watch Josh's
channel.
It's
not as pretty as the last one, but
the random picker, and for whatever reason, it can never add me to. Oh, there I am. Never mind, I am here.
Let's
okay,
go.
Let's hit it. Who gets to meet Devontae Smith? Let's spin it.
All right,
or start it, I guess.
Here we go. Yeah, it's not as pretty as the last one, but this is more effective. So, who's it gonna be? It is
Teef Speed.
All right.
T-E-F.
I don't know how to pronounce that.
I think
so.
Sure. There you go.
Congratulations. You have won.
I haven't seen him in the chat, but we will both post this on our community pages, and if you see it, we'll give you a couple days. When's the deadline to reach out to us, Josh? When is the deadline to reach out to us? What are we going to say? Friday? What is it, Wednesday?
Yeah, let's see. Probably there's...
Maybe Monday? Like we could redraw it on one of our shows on Monday? Give them some time.
We can do that.
Yeah. It is going to be June 29th, though, first, or soon, so...
Yeah, we can do that. That
there
works.
You go.
Or maybe if we want to do a week, right? Because we could just do it. If he doesn't claim it by a week,
that's fair.
Then we could just do during the live show. And maybe we just give it away to one of the loyal live show watchers. That we could do it in person.
Let's just do that. Okay. If we don't hear from him next Wednesdays, if you're watching the live show, you have a chance to win it. We'll just do it that way. But, this is kind of a big deal. So hopefully he, goes ahead and says that that it will work out. There we go. Congratulations to Teef. We'll both post that.
And you're getting to meet Smitty for crying out loud. So come on.
Pretty cool. Anyone whoever goes, if it is Teef, you got to mention that we sent you, right? You got to be like, hey, Thomas Mott Show, Philly Special Show, YouTubers. You get our name in front of Devontae Smith, right? I'm sure he knows who we are.
And if you somehow parlay the meeting into Devontae Smith into like Thomas and I getting Smitty on the show for an interview, I'll buy you game tickets. So I know it's impossible to happen, but I'll just throw it out there. Right?
There you go.
Good juju.
I will go halvesies on there, so Josh doesn't have to pay for the whole thing. But yes, you heard it here first. What are your expectations for the rest of the offseason? Do you see any of these other free agents actually getting signed? Like, if you actually were to go ahead and look at the current, 2024 NFL free agents who are actually out there, there's a decent amount of names besides Justin Simmons who are still kind of sitting around and waiting to be signed. And I'm curious if you think any of these guys are going to go out and get signed. Do you think Philadelphia makes any sort of moves over the next couple of, weeks?
I think that there will be maybe a move here or there, but over the next couple weeks, I'm kind of like set with the vast majority. Quite honestly, I don't know. You may know better than I do. I don't know if we're for sure at the 90 or if we have like one or
I
two
thought we
roster
had
spots
one.
open. Okay, I was
I,
gonna
I,
say
I
I
thought we did.
thought we maybe had one.
Sure.
So there might be a camp body, but to me right now, it feels like it's more of a, hey, we like our roster, we like the depth that we have. There's a
Mhm.
couple positions or camp battles or whatever that we need to figure out. But if and you've talked about this a couple of different times, but it's like if Justin Simmons was going to happen, you feel like you would have already done it.
It
You,
would
you
have
have had
happened by
so much
now.
time. You get him
Yeah.
on board. Yes, he doesn't need much time to learn Fangio system, so I get that. But it's you just go ahead and get something done now. Maybe the value is decreasing for him, but at a certain point, and it feels like we've already passed that point, he's basically said to himself, and he's basically said to the rest of the league, I'm going to wait until a team needs me. So,
Yeah.
not going fingers crossed, no injuries happen. But if some team has an injury in training camp or has an injury in preseason where a starter goes down, who's the first person they're calling? If it's a
Yeah.
safety, the first person you're calling is Justin Simmons, especially if you're a contender or you view yourself as a contender. You're going, all right, well, we need to get a safety now. And that guy's still available. He can still play. Maybe he's able to sign a better deal for a 1-year contract. So I feel like that's where him in particular or specifically would be. But either way, I mean, even for the other names that you mentioned or brought up there, it's like the only way I see is kind of a similar thing for Philly. If you get into camp and you have an injury, or maybe for some reason there's a positional group. We talked about linebacker a lot, so I don't know,
Yeah.
maybe there, but something that happens to where you go, we need a little bit more. We need another guy. We need to add some sort of piece there. But I honestly wouldn't see even like a semi, bigger acquisition until preseason or after
Yeah.
training camp when you have just a better idea. That's just kind of where I'm leaning anyway.
I totally agree. Yeah, it's always fun to speculate, and for whatever reason, Bleacher Report is like the one news site that's like, the Eagles should be linked to this person, or the Eagles should trade for Matt Judon, was like the one that popped up all over the
There's a
place
lot of
yesterday, and it
those.
was like,
Again, you
Matt
got to talk about
Judon.
something. So, I
Okay,
mean,
yeah, the Eagles are going to trade
I
for Matt
suppose.
Judon on June 22nd during the offseason. It's like, please,
How
But again,
fantastic.
if you're a writer for Bleacher Report and you write for the National Football League, what are you going to write about right now? I mean, the only
True.
story in the NFL is Aaron Rodgers. That's the only story, and that's a non-story that they've made a story because it's June. So, just
I guess
my
a
2 cents
question,
there.
honestly, for you and for other people is we talk about that, right? There's not a lot to talk about or the stories and everything else. Would you rather someone bring up a hypothetical that's pretty much totally off wall of trading for Matt Judon, or would you rather Hurts and Sirianni drama and they hate
That's
each
a good
other?
point.
So,
That's a good point. Yeah.
even as irritating as it
Yeah, that's
is, it's like,
fair.
come on, really, like get real. But I don't need the drama of Hurts and Sirianni. It's been totally overblown and out of
Yeah.
proportion and everything else. So I don't know. Neither are realistic, but
Mhm.
for what it's worth, anyway.
The
I
only
don't know.
problem with that, to like put a bow on the whole Hurts, drama that they're trying to make it out. The whole problem with the Philly media is as soon as Philadelphia loses a game this year, which they're not going to be undefeated, no team ever has, besides the Dolphins, I guess. But
Mhm.
as soon as they lose, like if they lose Friday's opener on September 6th against the Green Bay Packers and they don't look good, and Jalen's body language or AJ's body language or Sirianni has a dumb answer at the podium, oh my gosh, it's going to be nuts. It is going to be like it's like the dam is being held back and it's going to break and it's just going to be the hot take garbage that's going to spew out through all the rest of the media. Ooh,
It's
they
gonna
need to
happen.
have a 5-0 start, a 6-0 start. We've talked about the schedules. It's possible after Green Bay, but that would at least get the media, behind you, put them in their place. That way we don't start 1-2 and people just start losing their minds.
Yeah, because it will happen very quickly, like we mentioned. If it's you lose the opener, you maybe you beat Atlanta maybe, and then all of a sudden you're losing again, 1-2, struggling, and like you also mentioned, it's the body language. You got to shake off the memories or the
Yeah.
remembrance from last season, especially the way that it ended. So it won't take much, as we know,
Nope.
but it will not take much to rekindle that fire, and then it's just going to be blazing because everyone will just be like, "Oh, I told you." See, it's Sirianni. He's still micromanaging, or it's Jalen, and it'll just be nuts. So,
Can't
but at
wait.
least if it does happen, at least we'll be into the regular season. I am not looking forward to, quite honestly, this whole what is it, month and a half ish stretch, because it's probably going to be, they haven't officially announced it, probably the last week of July, I guess, if we
Yeah.
go by the last couple of years. So it's going to be not much going on, which is, again, maybe a good thing and maybe a bad thing. But we'll see. The guy is apparently, going to show up in the best shape of their lives, as
Best
if they
shape,
weren't
baby.
already from
Best
the
shape of their
reports that we
lives.
heard. So I don't know how much, honestly, AJ could get in more shape, though. That, I mean, if you want to look at anyone on the team,
Yeah,
if he's
pretty good.
already and what he's been doing, like, I don't know what we're talking about. By training camp, like, he's been crazy.
Yeah, yeah, it's gonna be fun. We're obviously gonna cover everything that happens, whether it happens or not, over the next couple of weeks. Be sure to stay tuned and subscribe. We'll get that. Hopefully, we'll hear from the winner of the Devontae Smith meet and greet giveaway. We'll post those on our community channels and give those away and make sure that everyone's good to go. And we got plenty more stuff happening over the next couple of days and weeks, as always. We're gonna sign off. We came on a little bit earlier approaching the top of the hour. Josh has a birthday dinner for his wife to run to, so shout out to Josh. Happy birthday, Sandy, and we will see you guys in the next one. See you.
Awesome. Go Birds.